Hi, it's Sheryl Sitz, and today we're going to dive into some of my very favorite topics like native populations, personal empowerment, and shared leadership. Welcome to another episode of Exploring Possibilities, where we are all about personal and collective transformation from the inside out. Everything starts right here. Show creator, producer Mario Rosales and I really appreciate the time that you spend listening to our shows, giving us your feedback, and telling your friends about it. The show just keeps growing. We're going on 10 years already and almost 300 of these. Thank you. We also appreciate your financial support. We've had to upgrade some equipment and get some new toys. So we appreciate your love at journeyofpossibilities.com/support. We now offer these via video on youtube.com/SherylSits, so you can watch our interviews with our guests. And then if it's more convenient to catch us on the fly, you can do that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and all of our shows are always housed at journeyofpossibilities.com. Joining us today is Kevin Hancock. I'm so excited about this guest. Let me tell you about him if you don't already know. Kevin Hancock is an award-winning author, speaker, and the CEO of Hancock Lumber Company. That's one of the oldest and best known family businesses in America. He's the recipient of the, I hope I get this name right, Ed Muki Access to Justice Award, Habitat for Humanity's Spirit of Humanity Award, the Boy Scouts of America's Distinguished Citizen Award, and Timber Processing Magazine's Person of the Year Award. He's a member of the Maine Indian Tribal State Commission and frequently visits the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota, which also inspired the book that we're going to be talking about today. It's called 48 Whispers. This is the beautiful cover of it. And you can pick up a copy. You'll definitely want to do that. We'll put a link for that in the podcast description so you can purchase it there. And a small gratuity comes back to us in support of the show at no extra cost to you. Kevin advocates for strengthening the voices of all individuals through listening, empowering, and shared leadership. He founded the Seventh Power, which is a nonprofit that is dedicated to advancing economic sovereignty for Native communities across America. You can find him online at thebusinessofsharedleadership.com, and I'm so excited to have him joining us now. Hi, Kevin. Thank you.
Sheryl, hi there. Thanks for having me.
It's such a pleasure to connect with you in person. I read a lot of books doing this show because I'm not going to waste your time if I haven't read your book. And wow, this one just touched my heart and I felt so connected to you throughout. Thank you for pouring yourself into this.
Oh, that makes me happy. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Your gift of photography as well as your open-hearted sharing of your journey to connect with the native peoples. I know you mentioned about it in the book, but would you like to share with listeners now like how that came about for you?
Yeah, sure. So it's kind of two-part sequence of events. First, in 2010, back at the peak of the housing and mortgage market collapse, I acquired quite suddenly a rare voice disorder called spasmodic dysphonia that suddenly made the previously simple act of speaking quite different and quite quickly changed how I had to go about leading as the CEO of our company. Anyway, a couple of years later, when the economy settled down, I had this growing feeling that I know you can relate to, that I needed to kind of serve and strengthen myself a bit more. And I didn't know how I was going to do that, but I always had a love affair with the American West. And that summer of 2012, I picked up a copy of National Geographic, and the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation was the cover story. And I read it and I was just swept away, kind of picked up and swept away in a way that I had never felt before. And I finished the article and said to my wife, Allison, I'm going to go there. I want to see what life's like for the people who live there. Now, this is clear across America for me, living in the state of Maine and New England. So anyway, I ended up making a trip that became two trips. And I've since been there over 24 times, and the kind of the big picture connection was there at Pine Ridge. I met this entire community that didn't feel fully heard, that felt as if a piece of their authentic voice had been taken or stolen from them, and in the most unexpected of ways, because of my own voice condition, I could relate.
Yes, I can only imagine. And that is something that I encounter time and time again with people. It seems like for most of us, I would venture to say, in some aspect of our lives, we haven't given ourselves permission or fully been able to express ourselves or speak our full truth. And so whether it's career or romance or sexuality, more personal issues, or all the way down, there's some bit of self-esteem or something behind that, or our culture has not allowed for who we feel our authentic voice to be. Whatever the case, we don't find it easy to fully express ourselves. So I think that's something that you opened up and talked about in this book that we can all relate to.
Yeah, really adopted this thought, following thought as kind of like goal for humanity or best wish. What if everybody on Earth felt trusted, respected, valued, and heard exactly as you are? You know, that simple idea that no change is required for you to be amazing. What would change if everybody felt that way? And I think everything would change. But what I really got thinking about, Sheryl, is the to your point and comments, is the historic role that leaders have played in helping others find their voice, true voice. And I concluded a bit unfortunately that overall across time, leaders had probably done more to try to direct and control and manage the voices of others than to liberate them. And that's when it really hit me that maybe my own voice condition at the time was a gift, not a hindrance, was a blessing, not a curse, and a invitation to lead differently in a way that gave others a stronger voice, whether it was employees in a lumber company in Maine or a community on a remote Indian reservation in the Dakotas. And maybe what binds us as humans is we're all here just trying to self actualize, just doing the best we can to come into our own true voice. And what a big role that leaders could play in making communities safe for people to do that.
Yes, you do touch on your leadership philosophy in the book, and I love it. It really is about empowering everyone throughout an organization, or I would carry it over and say throughout a family or throughout a community. The more we all feel okay the way we are and seen and heard, the more we can open up and contribute without all the fear of being shamed or blamed or whatever. It's transformational.
Right. Yes. And it's actually a much simpler way to live, you know, honoring people as they are is so much simpler than the traditional alternative. And so I found in my own life that really giving up judgment as best one can and honoring people exactly where they are just makes relationships, living, or managing so much simpler, easier, natural.
Yes. So, what difference do you feel like you were able to make in those native populations that you spent so much time visiting with and documenting through photography in your book and through the 48 Whispers? What difference do you feel like you were able to make for them? And what biggest difference jumps out to you that they were able to make for you?
Well, that's such a great question because I feel like I've been given so much more that I've given to that community. For a long time, people would ask me what I would do when I went there, and I struggled uh, for a while with the answer, but really settled on the truth, which is simple. I don't really do anything when I'm there. I just hang out with the people who live there. But I've come to believe that that in and of itself is a big deal. I might say it this way. I think awareness in and of itself is a powerful act. Like, I see you. I see you. I know you're here. I believe you're important, valuable. That you have, and this was the other big thing, that you have lots to give. You know, for generations, people like myself have been going to places like Pine Ridge to fix, save, or change the people there. And that's, of course, not the solution. And I found myself, I was really going there because of the energy and the perspective that that community was giving me. And I go out of my way to talk about that because I want them all to know how much I feel they individually and their community collectively have to give to the world. I really think indigenous communities like the one at Pine Ridge are keepers of a wisdom set that humanity really needs in the 21st century. We think of a reservation like that as a past based place at times, unfortunately, but I've really come to see it as a future based place. Like, they're holding perspective that actually is the key to humanity's future, not just understanding its past.
Yes. And I've actually had someone say to me, because I'm really fascinated with the indigenous cultures and have done a lot of healing with them as well myself. And when I talk about that, people that don't quite understand, I've actually had someone say to me, well, we don't want to go back to that way of living. We've done a lot of evolving since then. And I think to myself, have we really? How's that working for us?
Yeah, no, and I support what you said wholeheartedly. You know, here I am, for example, a corporate executive of a pretty good sized company, and I find in their perspective and worldview so much value for engaging humans, improving organizations, and advancing humanity. The big thought that it's kind of central to their spirituality, they talk about in Sioux or Lakota as mitakie oyasin, which translated means all things are one thing, or that, or one might say we're all related, or we're all brothers or sisters. And their point is that separateness is an illusion, that everything that exists is made of the same stardust. It's related and interconnected. And when you come to see the world that way, it really fundamentally shifts the way you think about humanity and different cultures within humanity, that really at the end of the day, we're all brothers and sisters. There's one single tribe. And if we could kind of reorient how we see, it could make a very big difference.
I agree. I agree. Yes, the interconnectedness of everything. And that everything I do that I think that I'm doing to one person, I'm doing to the collective. Like, there is nothing that won't come back to me. I am attached to everything that I touch and everything that I do. And the personal accountability that that brings, but there's also even a freedom with that. Everybody's like, "Oh, that's way too heavy, too responsible." Maybe, but on the other hand, how beautiful if I treat you like I want to be treated, which is stuff we were told when we were little kids, right? It's like,
Right.
oh, whatever, the golden rule. There's a lot to that.
Right. No, and I've been able to pull that back into, again, say, the modern world of business. The an example would simply be this: if you want a company to soar, put your energy into helping the people who work there soar. That if the people at work are having a meaningful, valuable, holistic experience, more than just an economic exercise, the company will soar on the wings of humans that are soaring. And so it just changes the way you think about um, engaging a community or achieving peak performance. But the purpose of it is not improved corporate performance. The purpose of it is the place of work is where lots of human beings hang out. And it ought to be, and there's no reason it can't be meaningful, spiritual, engaging, helping people find their voice. That old model was really like you'd work, and then on the weekends or in retirement or vacation you could pursue being yourself. But what a waste of time. And I've really gotten into the idea of bringing the world of spirit into the world of work.
In a way that honors each person's personal spiritual practices, I would believe.
Yes, yes.
That's beautiful. Well, and I love one of the pages that I did mark. There were a couple of them that I marked to bring up. And one of them, the first one I want to talk about, because you're talking about it right now, is one of the 48 whispers. Let's put work back in its place. And the picture that you took and put with that is so perfect of the dog. Let me see if I can get this centered here. The dog relaxing. I mean, I was like, wow, I love the way you assembled this book, and the whispers are written so beautifully. You want to speak to that whisper I'm talking about now? Instead of me reading it, you can just talk about it.
Yeah, I've really gotten interested in this idea of putting the work back in its place where yes, it's important and we're into it and committed, but it's not all consuming. I remember earlier in my career working so long and so hard that it would take me all weekend to recover to get ready to do it again Monday. And that really, again, is backwards. The purpose of work should be to enhance the lives of people who do it. And as technology and productivity and innovation all improve and expand, work should take less time, not more. I've gotten really into as full-time jobs the idea of a 40-hour work week or even a 4-day work week, 4 10-hour days, putting more free time back into the hands of people, and not just time but energy, so that work's not something that's draining. If work's energy giving and creating time for people that to pursue the other important parts of their life, that just makes a whole lot more sense to me.
Now I see why you've been like, what, 7 times on the top places to work in Maine? It's easy to see. And so, a business owner listening to this, or a business, a leader in business would say, how profitable is that? Can we actually have a profitable business that also sees people and honors them spiritually, intellectually, with their energy? Is that possible?
So glad you asked that question. And I would say from our experience, which now is over a decade working at these ideas, it's not only possible, it is highly likely and really the only way to maximize corporate performance. What we've found is when people are given a voice and treated as humans first, that the company's productivity, accuracy, discipline, commitment to best practices all get stronger. Our company's actually gotten more disciplined, and our safety leader summed it up best for me when he said one day, that simply because people are much more apt to deeply support that which they help create.
Yes, absolutely. And I also want to mention that you are reforesting in exchange for the lumber that you guys are going through, right? At your company, didn't I read that you've got some kind
Correct.
of sustainable foresting project?
Yes, correct. Maine today is the most heavily forested state in the nation. There are more trees in Maine today than there were 50 or 100 years ago, and done, in a sustainable fashion. Wood fiber is an amazing resource because it's renewable, recyclable, biodegradable. When we go into a forest area and do some harvesting, it's more like gardening. We leave most of the trees, but there's now from those trees that were removed more sunlight, more soil, more water, and the growth actually accelerate. So yeah, it's a wonderful resource, like almost any resource managed sustainably. A resource is uh, really defined often by how humans choose to manage it.
Absolutely. What comes to mind for you as another really big shift that you had as a result of going and being with the native populations?
Well, that's a great question too. A couple come to mind, but one was really starting to see nature's rules and how nature functions, and recognizing the obvious that we so often set aside, that humans are a part of nature, not separate from it, and ultimately aspire to organize in the same way nature does. I'll give you a quick example. I was actually spending some time on the Navajo reservation in northern Arizona a few years back when I had this epiphany. I was thinking about leadership, walking in the desert at sunset, and these 5 words plopped into my head. In nature, power is dispersed. I stopped in my tracks because it was kind of the clue I'd been searching for. And I looked around. You might have chuckled, and had an out loud conversation with the desert. I said out loud, Sheryl, I said, um, where's the headquarters of this desert scene? Where's the capital? Where are all the managers and supervisors? Where's the CEO? I turned to a group of cactus and said, which one of you cactus is in charge of all the others? And in each case, of course, right, it would bring laughter because the answer in every case is clear, that the secret sauce of nature is scattered and diffused. It lives in all its pieces, big and small. And humans really want to organize that way. But it takes an intentional act, because we need to reconstruct this century and century old model of power to the center, bureaucratic, top down leadership. But to change that leadership model, you've also got to help people think differently about followership. The whole model has to change.
It does. I think that's why I love the circles that Native people sit in so much. There is no head, there is no follower. We're all equal and we're all in this together.
Correct. And it's so interesting on the northern plains. So if you go visit the old military forts, they're all made in squares. And then you go visit an indigenous community, and everything's about a circle.
Yes. So funny, I just watched the movie Arrival again last night. It's an old movie. It's been out for a while, but they talk about all this stuff. Of course, there's an invasion of aliens, and the aliens come to teach us, to help us, but of course we're on the defensive. And they talk a lot about language and how, well, if this one person's talking to them about who's the opponent, you're setting it up in a structure that they may not even have. They may not see opposition, they may not be in that one against the other type mentality that we so often adopt in our cultures. So there's a lot of things coming out now, including this wonderful book and your work, to help us get back to some really brilliant truths that we once had and kind of threw out. Like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater comes to mind. Like, we threw out the good with the bad when we decided to quote unquote evolve. And there's some things we need to get back to about equality and rethinking leadership, and that we're not here in opposition, that we're all a part of, and our equality to nature. And all of that seems to come through so well from visiting and spending time with the native populations and in nature, as you've pointed out.
Yeah, I love that. And it goes back to, for me, something you talked about, Sheryl, at the beginning of the show. I read a lovely book recently about Crazy Horse, the famous Lakota warrior. And there was a point made in the book that really stopped me in my tracks. And it was this, that Crazy Horse, as a 30-year-old or so at the time, would have never thought about how he needed to make himself better, how he needed to improve his essence. That thought would have never crossed his mind. That he already would have understood he was whole. Now that's different from wanting to learn, grow, experience, improve, but that this whole idea on an individual level that I'm not enough is what we really have to get to. That's where we need the reset. Is you are enough. You're amazing exactly as you are. Nothing needs to change for you to be enough.
Yes. Absolutely. And I agree with Marianne Williamson when she said that's what we're afraid of. We're not afraid that we're not enough. We're afraid that we're more than we know what to do with ourselves, right? I agree with that. You have another page in here that I really loved, because I'm a very practical person. I love philosophy, I love spirituality. I love to sit and have these chats. But at the end of the day, as you said in the book, okay, now what? That's whisper number 29. And that's what we really are coming to is, okay, now what? The moment where you decide if you'll make a move toward recovery, and if so, in what form that initiative will manifest. Uh, as and when you say recovery, I think you mean as a systemic recovery of rethinking and redesigning the logic on which our current structure is established. So you want to speak to that for a moment?
Sure, makes me happy that Whisper spoke to you. Yeah, we can all look at the past, at what got us to where we are, and there's benefit in that done correctly. But at the end of the day, where we are is where we are, and where we are is exactly where we're supposed to be at that moment. And the question becomes, now what? In spite of the grievances or the misdoings or the past hurts, now what? What's the next move we're going to make? And you refer to this again in the opening of your show, but I think a lot about Gandhi's famous quote of becoming the change you wish to see in the world. And that's really, I think, learning uh, to to focus on the power within us and our own ability to create change and manifest something different. The first move, I think you essentially said this, the first move always comes from within.
Yes, it's that acceptance, right? That we really are enough, that we really are, we can do this. We are here for a reason, and we can do this.
Correct.
I love that. So what's next on the horizon of you're involved in so many things, and you're such a shining leader for us in rethinking the way that we're approaching things. Where do you see yourself next? Hanging out back in the Northeast, just chilling?
Yeah, and I'm gonna keep going Pine Ridge. I go there twice a year, and I think I probably will for the rest of my life. But what's next? That's how I've really changed. If you asked me that question, Sheryl, 10 or 15 years ago, I would have had it all mapped out. And now what I like to talk about and aspire to do is learning to follow, really creating space, time, and awareness for the future. Well, I say to both our daughters, I say, I think the future bumps into us all the time. It's just often we're too busy to notice or respond. So I'm really trying to follow the river that's in front of me, and I have no idea where that's gonna take me. And that's kind of the cool part when you once you make the switch and learn think about it that way.
Oh, I love that. I think that's one of the best answers I've gotten to that question. Thank you for that. And thank you for you taking the time to join us today. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us today that we didn't touch on that speaks to your heart right now?
Well, I just would say anyone wanted to reach out to me, you can do so through my website, which is the business of sharedleadership.com. But mostly, I just want to thank you for having me on your show, and I really love your energy. I think you're actually a beacon of giving others a stronger voice. And you're, I can actually like feel your presence here, just despite the physical distance that's between us. So I've really enjoyed being with you, and salute you for what you're doing, Sheryl.
Thank you so much. It's really a joy. It really is a joy. So thank you. And thank you, listeners and viewers, for joining us. Let us know what you think. We always welcome your feedback at journeyofpossibilities.com. We will see you next time on Exploring Possibilities.